millions of years. From their fossils and footprints, we learned how they walked and hunted, and how they lived and died. But there's one fascinating and intimate aspect of dinosaur life that we're just beginning to understand.
One of the questions that people really want to know the answer to is exactly how dinosaurs had sex.
With all those teeth and spikes, with all the power and drive, and the size, just what was Tyrannosaurus Sex? We all know about the birds and the bees, but what about the Earth's great megabeasts? How did they do it?
Dinosaur reproduction has actually been something that people have been fascinated with for a long time. But, it's kind of been under the covers, so to speak.
I think a lot of people have the misconception that dinosaurs were evolutionary failures or dead ends because, they did go extinct. But if you think about the fact that they were reproducing from 228 million years ago until 65 million years ago, it's a pretty amazing length of time to be successful.
That's over 800 times longer than modern humans have even been around. So they must have been doing something right. But what exactly? And how do we know? Studying the mating behaviors of most present-day animals isn't that difficult. Biologists long ago figured out how to observe wild courtship without spoiling the mood. But what biologists can learn firsthand, paleobiologists have to deduce.
One of the ways we answered questions about dinosaur reproduction is by looking at the modern relatives of dinosaurs, crocodiles and birds. They have a lot to tell us about dinosaur reproduction.
Modern birds and crocs can help us with dinosaurs because all three share a common ancestry with a group of reptiles called archosaurs, which first appeared 250 million years ago. These close evolutionary ties suggest that many traits shared by crocodiles and birds today probably also existed in dinosaurs.
So if we want to know something about dinosaurs, let's say something that's not preserved, like, did dinosaurs see in color? Do crocodiles? Yes. Do birds? Yes. Because we know that both crocodiles and birds see in color, then we think that dinosaurs also saw in color.
So by looking at these shared traits, scientists also begin to have some insight into dinosaur behavior. Like what, for example, would a potential mate see in a young male T.rex, such as this one? For one thing, some scientists now think that Tyrannosaurs may have had some very fetching plumage.
I could imagine that there was vestigial feathers on the head, perhaps the feet, perhaps at the end of the tail on these things that weren't for keeping warm. Certainly they weren't for flight, but were used just for a display sort of structure.
Add to that his impressive physique. He's 40 feet long from head to commanding tail. He's a meat eater, weighing in at around 6.5 tons. And despite his size, his top speed is as much as 20 miles per hour. At 18 years old, he's about halfway through his lifespan and at the very peak of sexual maturity. And so is this young female. Both are feeling something we might call desire.
It's going to be something that's just gradually developing. It's kind of like with, say, young males. They go into adolescence, they begin to feel this urge, they start thinking about girls a lot more than they ever did before. There's not anything conscious that's going on. It's just, it's there. And so I think that with the two Rexes, the male and the female, they're both going to feel this urge. They just, there's an itch that's got to be scratched.
But before they can scratch that itch, they have to find each other. If they're anything like birds, they'll use a mating call.
If you think about how birds interact with one another, male birds have a mating song. Not always, but most of them have a song they sing when they're ready to mate that only the male birds sing. Female birds recognize that male mating song, and they sing a song back.
Our female answers with her own low-frequency call.
If If you can send out a low-frequency sound, it travels over huge distances. It's not impeded by trees standing in your way. It's not impeded by grass. It doesn't get dispersed as easily as a sound at our frequency might. And so elephants use that to communicate with each other over very, very long distances. Large-bodied vertebrates like T.rex, large-bodied dinosaurs probably did very much the same thing.
Our young male would be quite receptive to the sound. Inside his hunter's ear is an extremely large tympanic membrane, or eardrum. This gigantic eardrum means he never misses even a distant opportunity to meet a receptive female. As he gets closer, another one of his keen senses kicks in.
From casts of the brain case of Tyrannosaurus Rex, we know these animals had a great sense of smell. I suspect it could easily sense a large Tyrannosaur's approach.
The T-Rex had two large olfactory lobes at the front of the brain, each roughly the size of a grapefruit, which suggests an extraordinary sense of smell. They also had a heightened ability to detect pheromones, the chemical signals animals release to attract potential mates.
We could look to the cranial nerves that attach to the brain, and we could tell, whether these animals had these particular senses. And we know that these nerves certainly existed. It's called the terminal nerve on the brain case of Tyrannosaurus Rex. And so they certainly had some pheromonal sense.
If we can sort of zoom back to this time, he and his potential mate have detected one another because of smelling, because of sounds. They have located each other in space, and they're coming together to meet one another. I can imagine that at that point, the initial point of actually seeing one another and being close enough to smell all the details of one another, that's when behaviors begin to kick in.
Behaviors designed to signal just how worthy our young male is. We've all seen the mating rituals of modern animals. Just imagine all that preening and strutting on a T-Rex scale.
If you have a great set of feathers on your tail and you're a peacock, you're probably a pretty strong, healthy bird, right? And that's a signal to the female. So in my mind, it is those features, those behaviors, those special characteristics that signal to the female that a male is a healthy individual that will provide her with healthy, good offspring.
As the male moves in closer, he begins to nuzzle her, gently.
That he'll rub against her so that she's aware that he's not going to try to bite her. And we certainly see that kind of behavior with the Komodo dragon. The male will come and stroke the female's back. It's a sign of appeasement, a signal that I'm not going to bite you, I'm not going to eat you.
Reassured, she lets him get closer. But then, as now, the course of true love never did run smoothly.
If you watch, African animals on TV, you'll see that there's often aborted attempts where the male will try to mount the female and she'll basically run off.
After an unsuccessful attempt, it appears our female has changed her mind, so he'll have to start courting her all over again. But suddenly, he's got a bigger problem. An older, more experienced male T-Rex appears on the scene.
Two's company, three's crowd. This is not good. We already know from behavior of animals today that males don't particularly care to have a rival around during the breeding season. It can often cause a lot of trouble. Go to single bars, same thing. Get too many males around one female, it's going to be trouble.
And now it's on.
This rival would probably go into a display posture, one to maybe attract the female and steal her away, but also to try to intimidate this male with the hopes that he'll wander off and then leave the female to him.
Even 68 million years ago, three was a crowd.
First line of action isn't necessarily battle. it is usually posturing. No one wants to get hurt.
It's a prehistoric game of chicken. The males circle each other, snarling aggressively and snapping their 4-foot-long jaws.
Almost all animals, when they're threatened, will puff up. You see the same thing in lizards today. You see it in birds. This is sort of the universal signal that, hey, I'm bigger than you think I am.
Let's say we've got two males that are equal in size, equal in stubbornness, and equal in being horny. They may have, in fact, gotten to the point where they start biting.
The older male has had enough. He lunges forward and sinks teeth the size of steak knives into the young male's flesh. That's gonna leave a mark.
There are some indications among some of the carnivorous dinosaurs of bite marks on the face. Of specimens do suggest that there were times when nobody gave way and they really did get into a tussle. And it must have been a real sight to behold.
Which the female does. As the two colossal males fight it out, our female watches from a safe distance, waiting to see which one will help her perpetuate the species. All over the Cretaceous world, the obstacles to sex are huge, but the drive to overcome them is even bigger and stronger. Then, as now, we'll find that sex is a more powerful force than almost any in the world. For more than 160 million years, dinosaurs dominated the planet. Some of the largest of them all were the Titanosaurs.
Titanosaurs are the behemoths, of Cretaceous landscapes.
This male is 50 feet long from his head to his tail. He's a plant eater and weighs around 70,000 pounds. Titanosaur fossils have been found on every continent but Antarctica, and not in small numbers, which shows they were successful breeders.
We often find very large accumulations of these animals' skeletons. We find trackways showing them traveling in big groups.
It's late fall, and for this herd of Titanosaurs, it's the height of the mating season. It's a time, biologically speaking, that takes a toll on animals so large.
The reproduction is very costly. It takes a lot of energy to make all these eggs, and I would doubt that these animals were reproducing more than one time a year.
Typically, animals are going to mate at a time that's going to allow for the fertilized eggs to be laid and hatched at a time that's favorable to the survival of the young.
For our Titanosaurs, that means mating in the dry season, before the rains. With good luck and timing, this female will welcome hatchlings just as rain and nature provide new leafy greens to feed them. But first things first, right now her mind is on choosing a mate. One of the males approaches the female and begins to make his move. He escorts her away from the rest of the herd, which cuts down on the competition. Since many birds begin their courtship with a dance, paleobiologists reason male Titanosaurs may have begun their mating ritual the same way.
If we look at some birds, when the male starts his dance, the female may also mimic that dance, so that the two of them are doing it together. We can envision the scene where we've got these Titanosaurs. The male is starting to do his dance. Maybe he's using his tail in some fashion. And she might start to signal that she's ready by doing the same thing, mimicking it. And it could be that this is a rather graceful dance.
The male inches closer to the female.
Some of these really enormous animals can be very gentle with one another. For instance, crocodilians will often slowly rub against each other, and it almost looks like they're trying to soothe one another.
Encouraged by her response, the male investigates further.
It's very common for animals to basically smell the other's genitalia to see how receptive they are to mating.
Okay, we can speculate on behavior, but do we have any idea what sort of sex organs dinosaurs actually had? Again, we look to their modern relatives. In crocs and birds, both males and females keep their genitals inside an all-purpose opening called the cloaca.
The cloaca actually means sewer in Latin because it's the place where everything ends up kind of at the end point of a digestive system or at the end point of a reproductive anatomical system.
Paleobiologists think that dinosaurs would also have had a cloaca, an opening for both excrement and sex. But probably males like crocs and some primitive birds would have had a penis inside their cloacas.
That's how we know that dinosaurs probably had a penis as well, because we see it in crocodilians and we see it in these very primitive birds today.
But the penises of birds and crocs are very different. So experts wonder which one best represents a male dinosaur's anatomy. Well, when it comes to titanosaurs, a clue comes by way of an amazing fossil discovery.
There's a site in Argentina called Acomohuevo. It's a site where there are thousands and thousands of sauropod eggs. Inside some of the eggs, there are embryonic remains of dinosaurs. And those embryonic remains were so well preserved that they could be precisely linked to titanosaurs.
The fossilized eggs suggest that the female titanosaur's anatomy was more crocodile than bird.
I say that primarily because their eggs are round. They don't have elongated eggs that are different sizes on one end or the other like birds do. And usually their eggs are found in a big massive clump, without any real serious organization.
And clumps of eggs suggest they were laid all at once, also a characteristic of crocodiles. So if the female titanosaur is more like a croc, then
It therefore makes more sense that the male anatomy is also going to be more crocodile-like than bird-like.
crocodiles have a smooth cylindrical penis with an external groove to carry sperm and a tip that resembles a mammal's penis. Some experts suppose that's what a titanosaur's penis probably looked like as well. It all leads to an irresistible question. What about size? Just how big are the bits of a creature that's as long as a 4-story building is tall? If body size is any indicator, the titanosaur could have had a penis that's up to 12 feet long and perhaps up to a foot wide. But not all animals have the same ratio of length to body parts. Crocodiles, it seems, have rather modest assets.
Interestingly, a 8-foot crocodile only has a 4-inch penis. But on the other hand, there are some ducks about the size of a goose, which for its body size has a rather long one. It's about 7 inches long.
If male titanosaurs had more duck-like proportions, well, it's safe to say the titanosaur was big. Just how exactly do two titanosaurs with more than 70 tons between them choreograph sex? Or two T.rexes with all their teeth? Utah, 68 million years ago. It may be hard to fathom how two animals, each longer than a 4-story building, could come together to mate. But they must have, and often. The sound of thunder on the Cretaceous plain may have actually been the echo of a courtship dance.
I think any mating between two giant animals is, it's going to be very touch and go. It's an awkward thing, obviously.
For years, scientists wondered just how these enormous beasts pulled it off. Maybe underwater.
I've heard speculation that maybe they mated like crocodilians and did it in the water. These aren't aquatic animals. I don't really see any need for that occurring. Just because they're large animals doesn't mean they can't mate on land. I mean, elephants do it.
Other experts suggested titanosaurs may have mated like giraffes, with their heads upright, a position that seemed to make sense for large-bodied long necks. But recent fossil studies indicate that the creatures didn't walk with their heads up high, so scientists think it's unlikely they mated in that position either.
Certainly, if the male is getting up on top of the female, he can still have his head out fairly horizontal to minimize the amount of pressure on the heart and loss of pressure on the head or on the brain if his head had been up high.
Not surprisingly, most species generally use the position that's easiest for them to negotiate.
Animals, for the most part, don't have as much variation as, say, humans or primates like chimpanzees.
The most likely position for Titanosaurs to have intercourse is definitely the male behind the female and on top of her from behind. Any other position is unfathomable.
Still, it's hard to imagine a female supporting all that weight, some 70,000 pounds of male dinosaur. But fossil evidence shows it's possible.
The leg skeleton on a titanosaur could have supported about 4 to 5 times its normal weight. So I have no doubt that a female titanosaur could support a large male being on her back during reproduction.
Once the male is securely mounted on the female, he extends his penis into the female's cloaca.
In crocodiles, as well as within basal early primitive birds, the penis is held inside the body. If you look at birds when they mate, it extends out right before the mating act is about to happen.
And that's what paleobiologists believe happened when titanosaurs satisfy their deepest urges. But were these urges only to procreate?
I don't think we know enough about what dinosaurs were thinking to know whether they were having orgasms or whether they were getting pleasure from intercourse with one another. In fact, I think it's probably more likely, just like it is in all other animals that we know about other than people, that this is something that's mostly just a drive to survive.
With any luck, her eggs are fertilized. But successful mating isn't the only factor in perpetuating the species. Then, like now, outside factors like predators, famine, and diseases played a part in survival.
Disease has been around since life, first evolved, and so dinosaurs were not special, and certainly weren't exempt from, succumbing to, diseases and things like that.
This herd is sick, and our female is one of the first to succumb. His mate dead, our male leaves the sick herd to protect himself. He'll need to find a new herd and a new mate. This could take weeks or months, but our male won't give up. The drive to mate is too strong. Finally, he spots a female on her own, who's likely part of a new herd. He approaches her and circles her. He rubs his neck against hers and begins a dance she mimics, until finally.
If we were on the ground when 2 titanosaurs were mating with each other, it would be a scene of noise, a scene of thundering activity. If you can imagine a male titanosaur mounting a female from behind, and then, that probably wouldn't be that loud in and of itself, but imagine the sound when that male titanosaur jumped off. Imagine the feeling of standing on the ground and feeling that ground if you were right there vibrating under your feet with the massive weight of this animal returning to Earth.
When they do return to Earth, our titanosaurs move back to her herd. But mating season isn't over yet. In fact, it may be just getting started. But if titanosaurs are more like crocodiles in this regard, they probably had more than one partner.
Well, in crocodilians, the way reproduction worked is that a whole series of eggs are going to get fertilized at the same time. Now, the actual male that fertilizes those eggs may not just be one individual. It can be several individuals. The females commonly will mate with several males, and so there'll be, basically this soup of sperm in the oviducts that these eggs are going to be encountering. So it's possible that multiple individuals will be siring those young.
So in this herd, tails weren't the only thing swinging. Eventually, mating season does end, and egg-laying begins. And then a new generation of titanosaurs is about to come into the world. But how does the cycle of life continue when the act of love look so dangerous and so painful. Mating in the late Jurassic period posed a fascinating puzzle: how to get it on without getting gored. The Stegosaurus is the iconic dinosaur with those large plates on his back. He's almost 15 feet tall and 25 feet long. He's a plant eater, and he weighs about 10,000 pounds.
Stegosaurus has a lot of special characteristics, including plates on its back and spikes on its tail.
An adult Stegosaurus has 17 bony plates along its spinal column. The plates alternate left and right, and each one tilts slightly out from the spine.
The plates are about a maximum of 3 feet tall, which is fairly large. On top of that, there may have been soft tissue, much like our fingernail, which may have extended the height to possibly 4 feet.
Initially, scientists figured the plates were purely for defense.
If we are living in a world with very large carnivorous dinosaurs, making yourself look big and intimidating is one very safe way of display. For Stegosaurus, regardless of whether it's male or female, if it turns its body sideways towards a predator coming at it, having that large plate makes it look bigger and more intimidating. It's kind of like a house cat that arches its back, fluff up its fur. It's all bluff. It's to give the impression that it's bigger than it really is.
But were the plates really about warding off potential enemies? A more recent theory suggests they actually may have had more to do with attracting mates.
What's interesting about stegosaur plates is that they have these grooves all over the surfaces of them that clearly shows that they were profuse with blood.
There's been a suggestion made of that it used it to control body temperature. The idea is that because there's so many blood grooves on the surface of the plates, that when the Stegosaurus got too hot, it could pump blood up onto the plate and radiate from it.
Like the ears of a bat-eared fox and the desert hare. Was it a cooling system? But if the purpose of Stegosaurus plates was to regulate body temperature, you'd expect larger animals to have larger plates. And recent fossils show that that's not the case. Individuals of the same size had drastically different plate sizes, so that idea was also scrapped. Perhaps the purpose of those eye-catching plates, pulsing with blood, was something else altogether.
You can imagine plates being flushed with blood, almost like blushing or changing the color of these plates on the backs of Stegosaurus as a potential way of displaying.
Displaying, as in displaying an interest in a nearby female. Could it be our young Stegosaurus is, well, blushing?
We have a situation where this young male Stegosaurus is just starting to become a teenager, and he's starting to feel the need to mate. We're not sure what triggers it, but he's getting the itch. He's starting to get a little more interested in the female Stegosaurus that he sees around him. He probably turns on occasion, pumps blood up into his plates in order to cause them to blush so that he stands out against the foliage. It's kind of one way of letting her know that he's not a threat, that he finds her pretty attractive and is hoping that maybe something will happen.
This kind of visual signal to attract a female is common in modern birds. During mating season, the male frigate bird, for example, has a throat pouch that turns bright red and inflates to turn female heads. But our young male hasn't yet mastered the art of seduction, and inexperience isn't his only obstacle. You have to wonder if those dangerous-looking spikes on the end of his tail might be giving the female pause.
These animals had these big spikes that came up off the top of their tail. What they were for, well, traditionally we think they were for defense.
Most Stegosaurus' tails have 4 pointed spikes, and each spike is 1.5 to 2 feet long. Since our Stegosaurus has courtship on his mind, he has to make sure his spikes aren't misinterpreted.
He's got to be able to signal other ways that he's intentions are good and honorable, of course. He wants to make sure that she is aware that those spikes are not going to be used as a weapon against her.
But at 13 years old, our young buck doesn't know how to do that yet. He has time to learn. If he's lucky, he'll live to 30. Still, there are distinct advantages to starting young.
The advantage to having sex as a teenager is simply you have more time in your reproductive arsenal. You have more eggs, you have better eggs, you have better sperm, and you have a longer amount of time in your life history, if you reproduce early, with which you can pass your genes along into the next generation. So the more times you can reproduce, the better.
But this young Stegosaurus won't get his chance today. Like countless males before and since, he's about to face some competition. Today, he's no match for his rival, but he'll live to try again another day. Our Stegosaurus will get another chance, and on that day, he better have his best moves ready. And it's winner take all in this T.rex battle for a mate. One will become a father, and one will become dinner. At age 13, this young Stegosaurus struck out with the females, but now he's 15, and he's learned a thing or two.
There's young Stegosaurus has finally begun to mature a little bit. Certainly is learning how to behave himself in order to attract a female. He's learned that he needs to increase the amount of blood flowing to the plate so that they're standing out and that she sees that that's a good signal that he's wanting to mate.
I can imagine or picture a male stegosaur posturing around with its entire body. So not just bobbing a head or waggling a tail, but instead turning its body so the female can see its full array of potentially color or its full array of plates, its full array of spikes, moving the tail around in sort of a dramatic way so the female can see the tail in all of its entirety. And I think that the female may have responded.
Still, those plates can be deadly.
How did Stegosaurus have sex? Probably like porcupines, very carefully. I say that because of those plates as well as the spikes.
So very carefully, he mounts the female.
He may not be very good at it the first time, and if he's not very good at it that first time, he may incur serious injury.
His very first try is not successful, but at least he's not wounded.
It probably takes some practice when you're thinking about two stegosaurs mating to get it right. It's probably not that easy to get it right the first time.
But soon he learns that her plates are more maneuverable than they look.
They weren't rigid structures stuck to the skeleton. They actually floated in the skin. Is it possible that they could be pushed aside a little bit? Well, certainly when the stegosaurs are younger and less mature, the skin is going to be more flexible, which then would argue indeed that stegosaurs did mate when they were younger. He could possibly push the plates aside as he mounted on top of her.
And then, at last, success. Unfortunately, no soft tissue fossils have ever been found to indicate what a stegosaurus penis or reproductive tract may have looked like.
The Stegosaurus lived 150 million years ago. That's almost 90 million years from the time the Tyrannosaurus and the Titanosaurs were living. To put that into perspective, we are closer in time to Tyrannosaurus than Tyrannosaurus was to the Stegosaurus.
Though we haven't found a penis in the fossil record, we can speculate.
If the Stegosaurus's penis matched up with, all the energy they put into designing these big plates and spikes, it could have been a pretty impressive thing.
I imagine that mating between two stegosaurs would be fairly quick and fairly stationary. I don't think there would have been a lot of movement going on in mating between two stegosaurus individuals because it would have been dangerous. There is a tail with big, sharp spikes very close to the reproductive organs. It's not a happy prospect if you imagine a male stegosaurus at the receiving end of a sharp, spiky tail.
But then, like now, very little can dissuade a male on a mission.
The span itself, from beginning to end, may have lasted only a couple of minutes, but they may have done this every few hours, and it could have been a full day where they would repeat this several times.
If the dinosaur's reproductive tract was similar to that of a bird, as some scientists suspect, sperm would pass through the cloaca and begin the voyage through the female's oviduct. When her ovary releases an egg, sperm is there to meet it and fertilize it. But timing is everything. This female may have some tricks to help ensure the survival of her young. Again, birds provide a good model.
Let's say that the female bird then doesn't really want to lay her eggs now, because when the eggs hatch, there's not going to be any food. So females can often hold the sperm in their bodies until she decides that conditions are improved enough that she can fertilize the eggs.
By day's end, the male's mission is accomplished, and the female's job is just begun. In time, she'll welcome a new brood, and each hatchling will be about the size of a human newborn. But when it comes to Tyrannosaurus Sex, not everyone has a happy ending. $68 million years ago, two of the most vicious beasts that ever lived are locked in a ferocious battle. These male Tyrannosaurus Rex are waging war over a female.
If you've ever seen two giraffes locking their necks and slapping each other with their heads, or two elephants charging together and goring each other with their tusks, you can imagine a very similar scenario for T.rex.
Combat between two adult male Tyrannosaurus Rex was probably one of the most spectacular sights that ever occurred. We find lots of gouge marks on the sides of their faces, and we find tooth marks in the bottoms of their jaws. These animals had enormous bite forces, at least 7,000 pounds or more than enough to puncture, through bone.
In this case, youth defeats experience.
I think when two Tyrannosaurs went at it, they were probably like crocodilians today. These are animals that show no reserve. Often death results from those combats.
The battle is over, and one great beast lies vanquished. The female is still interested in her fallen suitor. As dinner, that is.
We have bite mark evidence showing that Tyrannosaurs ate other Tyrannosaurs, so they appear to have been cannibalistic as well.
As she begins feeding on the dead male, our conquering young male sees an opportunity. Without any preamble, he attempts to mount the female. But again, it's just not that easy.
So our male comes up to the female. She's not quite ready yet. That's often the case. I mean, it's not an issue of the male T-rex seeing this female and it's running up and starts mating.
He may be tired from fighting, but she still expects a mating dance. But what exactly would that look like? In many species, the male has to perform for the female, just like this male bird of paradise does. He's working overtime to gain the affections of his partner. And this male bowerbird is hoping that his bouquet will do the trick.
Lizards, such as the chameleon, go through rituals of doing like push-ups, bobbing up and down, or their head, they do this routine.
This lizard's bobbing overtime to attract a mate. Likewise, our male T-rex uses everything he's got to entice his female. She responds, and her dance lets him know she's very interested.
Generally, when a female reptile is receptive to mating, they're going to go into a submissive pose. The female will often lift her head up to expose her throat, which is a very vulnerable position for her to be in. And this sends the message to the male that she is basically open to his approach.
The female, when she's receptive, is probably going to crouch down and raise her tail and move it off to the side a little bit. She may have actually used her hands to support her chest, keep her from toppling over.
Mating for these two may even have gotten violent.
One thing that's interesting to think about is that T-Rex has little tiny arms. So if T-Rex is trying to hold on, if the male T-Rex is trying to hold on during this quick intercourse event, one of the easiest ways to do that is by biting. He's got a huge mouth, very small arms that are kind of worthless. So perhaps the best way to keep in contact with the female during this event would be to bite her. Now, if a male T-Rex bit a female, almost certainly there would be blood drawn during that kind of interaction.
When the moment is right, with a final swift motion, the male's penis enters the female's cloaca. Scientists think that the T-Rex penis was about 6 feet long. And then, after their intimate moment, what's next? They simply move on?
All right, now our two T-Rexes have had this very happy coupling, and what happens afterwards? Do they roll over, have a smoke? I don't know. I'd sort of doubt that. I suspect that instead the male is just going to leave. We don't know 100%. I mean, certainly if we look at ostriches, it's the male that tends to guard the eggs. And the female, when she lays them, it's like, so long, buddy, you caused this mess, you take care of them. Is this the case with Tyrannosaurus Rex? We don't really know.
Our female may well be left alone to protect herself and her coming family. But if all goes well, she'll soon hatch a brood of the most dangerous and iconic dinosaurs ever to roam the earth. The Tyrannosaurus Rex, the Titanosaur, and the Stegosaurus. Millions of years ago, they lived and died, seduced and mated. It's only natural for us to wonder just how they made the Earth move.
I think we want to know how dinosaurs had sex in part because it is a piece in this evolutionary tapestry that is life on Earth. And the more we know about other living things, the more we know in some ways about ourselves. And we're just curious.
They ruled the Earth for more than 800 times longer than modern humans have even existed. So when it comes to sexual behaviors and reproduction, they must have been doing something right. And that fascinating and intimate detail of dinosaur life is finally beginning to be understood. It's more than the secret lives of dinosaurs. This is Tyrannosaurus Sex.